Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the City of Bangor's March 19th, 2024 Planning Board meeting. My name is Reese Perkins. I'm the chairman of the board. I will introduce board members first. On my far left, alternate member Janet Jonas, then Mike Bazinet. I'm sorry. Yeah, everybody switched up on me. Jonathan Boucher, Tricia Hayes is next, then Mike Bazinet, Ted Brush on my left, Don Maha on my right, and Josh Sashir beyond him. Excuse me. Board members are volunteers from the Bangor community. City staff members in attendance this evening include Planning Officer Anya Collette, and then Assistant Solicitor Grace Innes, and Planning Analyst Brian Scannell on the far right, and sitting in the back is Ann Krieg, who is our Development Director and is going to participate in presentation this evening. We thank them all for our help with this meeting this evening and setting us up and getting these things going for us all. The planning board has multiple roles, really a couple of different roles, and you're going to see both of these this evening. The first role is with regard to zone changes and then code amendments to our code of ordinances. Those two things are kind of grouped together, and we have three of those this evening, so we're going to handle those things first. Those get voted on by the board, but the final say on those is by the city council, so they will be looking at those after us. Although if the city council wants to reverse a decision that the planning board makes, and they can, they will need to have a supermajority vote, I believe it's called, which I think is 3/4? Two-thirds? Thank you. And so we typically say ought to pass on those when we vote for them, because we're really presenting that further to the city council. They should be handling those projects next week at their meeting on Monday night. The second thing that we tend to do a lot of are land development permit applications. They're also known as site plan review. Sometimes you might think of them as subdivisions. We have two of those site plan reviews this evening. Site plans are reviewed for compliance with city code with regard to parking, driveways, stormwater management, lighting, buffering, etc. We also ensure that the project meets the requirements of the zone that the project is developed in. For larger plans, which may include some review of main DEP standards, we look at those as well. Some uses, and one of the ones we have this evening is a conditional use, which creates special conditions on top of our standard zoning. And so you'll see some of that as well this evening. So that's kind of what the planning board does, and it's important to know that because our process is different for each of those two types. I would like to remind everyone this evening, if you would, please silence your cell phones. The way the meeting proceeds is we will call the applicants in the order that they are on the agenda. If you've seen the agenda, you know what comes up first and so forth. When the applicant is asked to present their project or their proposal, their representative or the applicant themselves will come up to the podium and introduce themselves and give us a brief introduction into the project. Excuse me. Once the presentation has been made, the applicant typically will stay at the podium while the staff gives us more information, while the board members ask the applicant or the presenter any questions that they may have, and then the applicant generally sits down and we ask for public comment on that item, and that's when you all may have an opportunity to speak if you're here for the public comment part of it. And we will then close public comment for that particular item, and we'll move on to the board deliberation and making a decision on that particular item. If you are a member of the public speaking on a particular project, it is very helpful if you would speak with regards to the code or with regards to the comprehensive plan, because the board makes their decision based upon those things. I love to hear whether you like a project or not. In fact, I would rather hear if you don't want a project or you do. That helps us understand your voice. But really what the board needs to know is, why do you think it doesn't meet the standards of the city's code? Let's see, if you are on Zoom this evening, if you would use the raised hand function to let us know that you would like to speak, and we will bring you into the meeting. The board may approve or deny a project based upon the compliance issues, as I just mentioned, and we may also ask the applicant to address modifications to the plan if necessary. The board may continue an application to a future meeting if we feel like we don't have enough information, or we need something changed or modified, or any other reasonable cause. If someone disagrees with the decision of this board with regard to site development projects, they have the right to appeal to the decision to the Superior Court of Maine. Once a project you are interested in this evening has been reviewed, you are free to leave the meeting. You don't have to sit here for the whole meeting. Feel free to stay if you would like to. When you are leaving, I would ask, because we've had a little trouble with this, these speakers in this room are excellent, but the problem is once a particular item is done, if everyone kind of starts chattering in the background, it makes it very difficult for folks that are on Zoom. And Janet's nodding because she was on Zoom last week, and I know this was an issue. So if you would, get yourself out the door, out in the hallway, you can chat outside. It would just make the meeting a lot easier for the rest of us. So I would appreciate that. All projects, once reviewed by the board, must apply for all site plan projects. Once they are approved, must apply for construction permits with the code office. All approved projects need to be started within 6 months of our decision and completed within 2 years. Extensions may be given for good cause. I didn't mention earlier, but site plans are different than zone changes in that we make the approval on that or not, and it doesn't go to the city council afterwards. We thank all applicants for their time to present their project for our review. I also thank any of the public for speaking. That's important as well. And this is important for the city's development and the direction of our future, and that's why we do this. So I'm going to go right to the agenda. And the first item is to amend the land development code by changing a parcel of land located on Grandview Avenue. This is map lot R41023A. From Parks and Open Space to Multifamily and Service District. Said area of land contains approximately 10.5 acres total. The applicant and the owner is the city of Bangor. Before we get started, Ann, I hate to hold you up on this.
That's okay.
But I need to read a little conflict of interest discussion. Some of the members of Habitat for Humanity are here this evening. I thank those guys. Last year, Habitat for Humanity received an ARPA funding from the city for housing, increasing housing in Bangor. The Grandview project has not progressed to the point where they have chosen developers yet. I think Ann will probably speak to this a little bit later on. But Habitat for Humanity has had conversations with the city staff in regards to building on this site. My wife, who is here this evening, has been a longtime supporter of Habitat for Humanity, and I consider her a champion because of that. In January, I was asked to join a subcommittee of theirs to look at some plans for using this ARPA funding, not necessarily with regard to the Grandview project. So far, this group has had one introductory meeting and several informal discussions. Given the potential development of this particular Grandview parcel, in my role as the planning board chair, I decided it would be best if I was not involved with the Habitat for Humanity committee, and I resigned my position on that board. Not board, I'm sorry. It's a subcommittee. Nonetheless, I want our board members this evening to be aware of my previous connection to the organization, and I would like the board to be aware that my wife and I have no financial interest in the Habitat for Humanity itself or this particular project, nor do I have any special interest in Habitat for Humanity other than what is available to any other member of the public. As such, and based upon the city's code of ordinances, I don't see that I have a conflict of interest, but I believe it is prudent that the board take a vote on this issue. And so I ask if the board has any questions before Member Boucher.
Can we get our council to weigh in
I
on,
would be happy to have that.
to weigh in on if any constituted conflict there?
Yeah, so the Bangor Code of Ordinances, it's 33-11, that covers conflicts of interest. So with that, you just have to raise if you have any interest in what's being voted on, which Chair Perkins has done. And so what you guys will do is hear all the facts, which he has disclosed, and then you will vote on whether or not you determine that he has a conflict of interest. Does that make sense?
And it's primarily financial, the conflict, right?
It can
Or
be
if there's a
financial.
direct family member that has a financial,
Yeah, so it can be financial or a special interest, which he covered a little bit of. So if he was still sitting on one of the committees or something like that, then that would be special.
thanks, yeah, that's good.
Do you have any more questions?
No, that's good.
Okay.
Any other board member questions?
Before the board takes a vote, I wanted to note, Trish is on Zoom, and so she is present, and we should probably pull her over as panelist, by the way. So just wanted to know that she's attending.
I'm confused.
Trish Hayes, she's here as panelist on Zoom.
She's also here.
She's right next to me.
I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. I just, I
How
don't
are you
understand.
in both places at once?
I
Yeah.
think somebody's probably using my computer at home.
Oh.
Hey, you got two votes.
I didn't see you over there.
You didn't say that.
That's one more reason why.
Never
I
mind.
must confess.
That was awesome. That's good. That's a good commercial break.
That's pretty
right
funny.
That's great.
there. So with no other questions, I will do a roll call vote. Don't feel like you're gonna hurt my
Need a
feelings.
motion?
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you.
I can't do it.
Yes,
Somebody else can.
you cannot.
We have to phrase it in the affirmative, right? Or is it,
It is best to make a motion of yes, even if you expect to vote no.
okay.
So I'm looking for a motion on whether I have a conflict of interest or not.
So I would move, and guys, correct me if my phrasing is off here. So I move that Chair Perkins does not, no, excuse me, I was gonna do it wrong. I move that Chair Perkins has a conflict of interest, and that lets us vote up and yes or no. Okay, is that right? You
That's
agree on the
fine.
phrasing? Good.
Second. And I have a second from Member Maher. Thank you. I will do roll call vote. Member Saucier,
A negative?
Member Maher,
No.
Member Hayes,
No.
Member Brush,
No.
Member Boucher,
No,
Member Bazinet.
No conflict.
Thank you. And the chair cannot vote on this item. So there is no conflict there? Now, Ann, you can come up and present the project. Thank you for waiting for us to get through that.
That's fine. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Ann Krieg. I'm the Director of Community and Economic Development. I'm here representing the interests of the city this evening on a zoning application for a parcel of land, about 11 acres on Grandview. It doesn't have an address on it because it's an empty lot, but we'll talk a little bit about how well located it is in a second. Just to give a little bit of background, as you know, the City Council has declared this the year of housing. They've asked staff to, look at all different types of housing stock. As you know, over the last few years, we've made multitude of changes to the code to increase housing opportunities throughout the city. And even going as far back to your affordable housing work group from 2018 and 2019, and also all of the work that you did on the comprehensive plan, we all heard loud and clear that housing was an issue. So at a staff level, we started looking at city-owned properties. We've been working with the technical advice from the folks at the Genesis Fund and working with potential partners just to look at this particular site to say, is this a good site for us to place housing? And specifically, one thing that we've really encountered is in planning world, they call it the missing middle. And those are households that are at 80 to 120% median income. So, they sort of are priced out still of market rate housing, but they don't, because of their income, their household income, they can't get any subsidy or any assistance for housing. And so that population, people working at the hospital, teachers, they're kind of left out of that housing market. So one of the recommendations that we've made to City Council is to look at missing middle as for this particular parcel. So in terms of the site itself, the controlling factor of development on this parcel is going to be wetlands for sure. There's a significant amount of wetlands on the property, so that will control both the number of units and the location of those units on the property. We do have a wetlands map that Carpenter Associates did for us, so we do have that information ready. And the site is very well located. Right across the street is one of the city's open space parcels, which has a wonderful trail system that ends up at the high school. So, it's very well located to both open space and to being able to walk to school. On the other side of the parcel is a shopping center that has, a Hannaford, has a grocery store, it has all types of retail and services that make it very convenient for people that would be living in this development to get to be able to walk to even. So the property is transitional from that heavily traveled, occupied part of Broadway with all of the commercial uses. Right next door to the site, on one side of the site, is a development that the planning board had permitted over the last few years for senior housing. And that property is zoned multifamily and service district. And then on the other side, so this is a transitional property, on the other side of the property is zone low density residential. So we looked at the comprehensive plan for some guidance, and in the land use plan, this is part of the city's growth area. The growth area was designated, as you remember, over a few meetings with the planning board, with city council to, really look at where do we want to direct growth over the next decade. And this property is in that growth boundary. The multifamily and service district was chosen because it does give us the most options. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be at a full build out. Again, there are some wetlands or some controlling factors on that property, but we felt that it's in keeping with what's happening next door with Penquist, that has also zoned multifamily, and so we felt that that would be the best district for the site. So I'll take in terms of process, I just wanted to quickly go over what happens next. As you know, you make a recommendation on whether this ought to pass or ought not to pass. It goes to City Council for their decision. And should the City Council pass this code, we will start looking at, different layouts, for development at the site. We would like to have a neighborhood meeting with some design professionals just to kind of go over how are decisions made when we look at a site plan. That's the type of work that we weren't able to do during the comprehensive plan process because of some COVID restrictions. So we're kind of excited to be able to have, a public workshop where we really look at a site and what's best for that site. So to come up with some layout plans, there might be some pre-permitting where we come in and do some, subdivision permitting just to kind of get the lots, if we're going to go into separate lots or not. And then once those decisions have generally been made, we're going to put out a request for proposals for multiple partners for the parcel. And then it'll come back to you again for another layer of permitting after that. So I'll take any questions that the board may have.
Sure. Thank you, Director Krieg. Appreciate it. Board member questions? Member
Yeah.
Boucher?
The proposal review that you were mentioning, what does that process look like? I haven't ever witnessed that. You said you would go out for proposals, people would submit their options based off of some of the pre-permitting you would do,
Right.
and then they would present plans, and there would probably be a handful of them. What's the decision-making process like that goes into choosing?
It'll be ultimately decided by city council. But again, it would be great to have, planning board input as well. Although working outside, that we'll have to work with city solicitor's office to make sure that we're not putting you in a pre-permitting situation that could mar the permitting process later. But we definitely want to have a public workshop to involve the neighborhood.
Member Jonas?
And when you mentioned public design input, you mentioned, I think in the packet, is charrette. Could you explain? what
Yeah, like a
charrette is?
design charrette. The word charrette is, as it sounds like, it's a French word. It was actually for art students in France at the last minute that they had to get their stuff in. They would have to go on a charrette. They would have to shred it out to get it done quickly. So the word has morphed over time. Design professionals use it to say, I'm trying to get this to my client in a quick way. But a design charrette is a meeting of, with design professionals and members of the public kind of working together on plans to kind of, talk through that site analysis. How do these decisions get made for development and to really participate in it. So it's much more participatory. And I've done them in the past and, come up with some really great things.
Chair, if I might just add a comment.
Yes.
I participated in one for the visioning for Pickering Square with Ann and
Yeah,
city members, and it's very much, that particular one at least, was very much intended to bring community input into the design process, to take comments from neighbors and other members of the public to input what could best be done in that space. So thank you for that.
yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of hits on, just for folks that don't really understand some of this, what that kind of hits on is, we're talking tonight about a zone change for this property. But that doesn't mean that there's been a decision yet on things like how this property is going to be laid out, how many sites there are going to be, that sort of thing. That all happens later on. So if you're concerned about something like the way the driveway is going to be laid out in this property, we don't know anything about any of that yet. That's all for later. And the process will include the public and the planning board later in that part of the project.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other board members have questions? I have one, but looking to see it. I know that, what's driving this is the city council's desire for more housing in Bangor. And, we have heard a little bit of some folks confused about what is the purpose? Why are we doing this? So could you hit a little bit on maybe some numbers as to how short is Bangor with regard to housing? Do you have any idea of what the numbers?
I don't have a number exactly of the number of units that the city needs to be able to provide enough housing. But, what we hear from our major employers and from school department is that employees have a very difficult time trying to live and work in Bangor, and they want to. They want to live where they work. They don't want to commute. They're having a hard time finding housing, whether it's somebody at low income all the way to, the head of a department at the hospital. I mean, it's every demographic that we hear from.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Director Krieg, I appreciate it. I think you're all set.
Okay.
I think what we'll do is go to the public comments, and then if we need you to come back up, we'll ask.
I'll leave this mic on for
Thank
everybody.
you. So I will open this up to public comments. Hold on a second, please. Let me just say a few things first. I had considered sort of limiting public comment this evening to 3 minutes a person, because sometimes these meetings can really drag out if folks just go on and on and on. I'm going to trust you all to try and stick to the point and get to the point and to tell us what you think, and then let someone else get up and speak. And if you can do that, we'll just let you speak. And I'm not going to hold this to a timer. I would rather not do a timer and let you all have what you feel you need to say. I would also remind you to please be respectful, as I've mentioned earlier. And I already mentioned, but I would just emphasize again, we aren't so far along that we really understand what is going to happen with this project. That will come at a later meeting. But what we are looking at tonight is whether this project should be allowed for whether this site, this property should be allowed for a zone change or not. And with that said, I will ask you, ma'am, since you raised your hand first, to please come up, introduce yourself, let us know if you're opposed to or for the project, and then carry on.
My name is Nori Kasdoy. I live with my husband Douglas on 555 Grandview, immediately next to the area where the proposed zoning changes. I have lots of reservations about the project. I know there is a need for housing, but what hasn't been mentioned yet, that we're building 2 major neighborhoods within a mile of this zone change area. There's 80 units right next to St. Joe's Family Practice and off Lancaster Avenue that is still being built. We don't know how that's going to affect the neighborhood. I mean, we've all been on Broadway and we know how busy it is there, how congested. Why do this zone change now? We don't even know how another 160 families in that immediate neighborhood are going to affect that area. I think it is premature and irresponsible at this moment, when we don't even know how all those families or all those new residents are going to affect the neighborhood, to start planning. Yes, I know this is geared towards a different income group, but it has been approved by the city. All these units are being built. Is there going to be another 160 vehicles affecting Essex and Broadway? Is there a traffic plan for how we're going to deal with all this? I think it is very unwise to add more congestion and more residents to an area that is not designed for this. And we don't even know how all these new housing units are going to affect this. So that is my very serious reservation. I know there is a need for housing, but this is not the solution, to heap it all on 1 square mile.
Okay, thank you. Who's next? Don't be shy. Yes, sir.
Great, thank you for letting me speak. Thank you, board. So my name is Matt Chatfield. I live with my partner, actually right next to Nori, so it's two lots down from the proposed zone change. I also have very serious reservations. In the 4 years that I've lived there, I've seen more and more traffic on Grandview, and it's noticeably louder now than it was even just a few years ago. And I worry with these additional units that are going in off Essex and then off Broadway. As Nori said, we don't even know what the impacts are going to be from those units, and we're going to build more. And we've already seen, without the additional traffic from those units, increase the amount of traffic from Broadway to Essex. It's sort of a path that a lot of cars seem to take, and nobody seems to mind exceeding the speed limit. I have very serious reservations about jumping in and building more units without understanding the impact. I'm also a biologist by training, and I'm very worried about the impaired waters of Arctic Brook that's immediately adjacent to this lot. Having the green space there now, I don't think of it as an empty lot, because it is a natural area and it's across the street from Prentice Woods. I would really like to see the trail system expanded to utilize that space for the community to make it more livable and not just jam in more units, more apartment complexes when there's already so much of that happening within this square mile. So, yeah, those are my concerns.
Thank you, Matt. Anyone else? Yes.
Hello, my name is Karen Mary's daughter. I'm a resident of Bangor, and I don't live in that neighborhood, so I can't speak from that perspective, but I've been participating in the Penobscot Climate Action process recently, and recently finally read the comprehensive plan, and very strongly in favor of transit-oriented development and infill, that we maintain the growth district, but also leave outlying areas less pressured by development. I spend time like on Bangor Land Trust land in the outskirts of Bangor. I live near the outskirts of Bangor, and the sprawl is very disturbing to see, you know, big house after big house in a vast area that then all require services from the city of Bangor. It's bad for the environment, it's bad for the economy of the city, and actually bad for people's health to be dependent on cars all the time. So here's a chance. I'm actually, again, I'm not living in the neighborhood, but I'm actually happy to see the development on Lancaster Avenue, happy to see the development on Outer Broadway, and would support this Grandview project because they're so close to transit. The bus goes right by all those, well, Lancaster's up the hill, but I think there still could be a great opportunity for trail development. I've been in contact with the city about how we could do a trail from up on Essex down to the back of the Broadway Shopping Center and then out right past Prentice Woods. You could go on out to, is it Birch Hill Estates? I don't remember the exact name. So I think there's still plenty of options for that. But I think we have to, if we're going to increase housing, think about more dense development and transit-oriented development. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Karen. Anyone else? Who's next? Please.
Hello, my name is Melissa Houston. I am a Bangor resident. I'm also the executive director for Habitat for Humanity here in Greater Bangor. And I wanted to offer some positive comments in support of this zone change request based on my ongoing conversations with the staff of the City of Bangor, as well as staff members of surrounding municipalities and other organizations who have been tracking our housing crunch. So I do have some numbers. The Community Health Leadership Board of Bangor and the Maine Affordable Housing Coalition commissioned a study recently that found over the next 5 years a projected increase in the Bangor region of 1,900 new regional jobs in healthcare, finance, and hospitality. Yet there is also a projected decrease in the number of working age adults. So what that means is we need to continue to attract more people to the area. Our region has worked very hard to not only retain businesses, but to attract new businesses and potential employees in the area. But housing has become a true barrier for folks who want to relocate. Yes, some of these jobs can be done remotely, but we want these employees to be here. We want them here in our community. And when these employees are here, they contribute to the tax base, they support and shop local businesses, their children maintain our enrollments in our school systems that bring other amenities to the area. And all of these are factors that are very important to our city remaining active and to thrive. This study also points out the dilemma that developers face who often lose money building properties within the actual affordability for the majority of the region's workforce. At Habitat, we are very eager to continue to increase our production of affordable homes, but the construction costs are beginning to become more and more prohibitive. I've been very pleased with the City of Bangor and the staff and the City Council declaring this year as the City of Housing. I have been very impressed by their prioritizing housing solutions in the comprehensive plan as well as in the ARPA funding. which Reese did mention that we were recipients of and are actively looking for opportunities to collaborate. We aren't going to be able to do this on our own. We're going to need to collaborate and be as innovative. And what the city is demonstrating that they are committed to that by offering up their own internal resources and leveraging their own assets to be part of a solution. So for that, I do think the zone change on city-owned property is one example of that commitment and would support the zone change. Thank you very much.
Who's next? Yes.
I'm Emily Ellis. I live in Bangor. I am a Realtor, and I will tell you that as of today, there are 26 homes available in Bangor, Maine. That's way lower than it has been. We need housing for all the reasons that Melissa just talked about. And I think part of what a lot of people have enjoyed for a long time in a smaller city is the country of Bangor. But we really do live in a city of Bangor, and I think it's key when you enjoy living where you live to be inviting for other people who would also like to be here, to fulfill all the job openings that we have, and to make sure that Bangor stays thriving.
Thank you, Emily. Who's next? Going once, going twice, no one else? Okay, I'm gonna close the public comment portion of the meeting, of that item.
Chair, any Zoom?
I'm sorry?
Anyone on Zoom?
I didn't see anyone on Zoom. Trish is still up there. And Director Krieg, do you feel a need to respond to any of that? Okay, thank you. I wanted to give you the opportunity. Any further review or comments by the board? Any discussion before we get to a motion? Yes,
I have a question for staff. When the setbacks, side setbacks, does the greater one prevail when two zones are against each other? The larger setback? For example, I think it's 40 on the LDR, and it might be 5 or 10 on the proposed.
So they would have to look at the setbacks of okay, you have the zone for the property and the developments going on the property. They have to use the setbacks of that zone to their property line. So they don't have to worry about the setbacks on the LDR side of the
Okay.
property.
There's no increase when it's right on the zone line, isn't it? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Quick
Member
question,
Jones?
maybe for Ann, maybe for Anya. I didn't see the wetlands map in the packet, I might have missed it, but do we know approximately how much of the property is impacted by wetlands?
I don't have the percentage on me. I don't know if you,
I don't know the number. It is a large portion.
Large
of the
percentage,
property.
and as in probably the lower southeastern
Yeah.
half of the
sort of in
property.
that, as you're looking at the lot from Grandview, it's sort of off to the right and in the back.
Southeast, so, okay. Because I looked at a couple of different maps, including a NEPA map, and I couldn't get actually the actual wetlands, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it does look like the Arctic stream does impact it quite significantly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other board member questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, I'd be interested in a motion. I recommend the motion ought to pass, no matter which way you stand on this, just for clarity's sake. Member Marr?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would make a motion to recommend to the Bangor City Council to amend the Land Development Code by changing a parcel of land located on Grandview Avenue. And that would be map R41, lot 28A, from the current zoning parks and open space to multifamily and service district.
Thank you. Did I get a
23.
second?
23, I'm sorry, I misread.
You have a second? Member Rush has a second. Thank you. A roll call vote here. Member Saucier. We have a motion to pass.
Yes.
Member Maher.
Yes.
Member Hayes.
Yes.
Member Brush.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
Member Bazinet.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So unanimous passage of that item on to the planning board at the city council next Monday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you folks coming. Okay. Next item on the agenda this evening is to amend the land development code by reducing the minimum off-street parking spaces required for residential dwelling units from 1.5 spaces per unit down to 1 space per unit, and to allow the planning board to authorize reductions in parking minimums for uses requiring a land development permit. As you, the board members may recall, staff presented us this information and this idea at a previous planning board meeting for discussion. And so we've kind of seen this and talked about this already. Does Officer Collette want to speak on this?
Yep, I do. I won't go over the nitty-gritty of it since we've been through that before as far as reducing the requirement for residential to 1 space per unit. But we did add in a allowance for the board to allow for reductions in required spaces for anything requiring land development permit, which covers a lot of different things. It covers uses in certain zones like our heavily commercial and industrial zones. It covers anytime a parking lot over 20 spaces is created, certain residential uses and things like that. So, you know, you all see that we have a lot of projects that come before you. So if the applicant can make a case for having a reduced need for parking, then you have that ability to allow them to provide less, so.
Only reduction.
A reduction, yes.
Thank you. Board member questions of the staff?
Do you think we've adequately addressed the issue that this change will increase on-street parking?
So you know, we're not instituting a maximum, so developers can add more parking if they need more parking. We see that with other projects that have come before you where they've gone above and beyond the code because their clientele, they anticipate them needing more parking. But in certain places that are adjacent to transit or that are walkable and bikeable, they can often show their clientele doesn't need that much parking, or it's just the demographics of the clientele they have. So I don't anticipate that being a problem, especially since we still do require 1 space per unit with this. But also we are still in the discussion process with the city about other departments in the city about our on-street parking rules. So we do anticipate, you know, we might.
I guess it would be a special problem in the winter months for obvious reasons.
Right, yes, and we are talking about that issue with other departments right now to see if we can add more flexibility. But I don't anticipate that being so much of an issue since we still do require the 1 space per unit minimum. So, yeah.
Any other board members? No? Public comment. I will open public comment on this item only. If you would like to speak, please come forward, introduce yourself. And, yes, sir.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I have a question, and I might not phrase this exactly correctly. I apologize. I'm curious, does this only apply to new developments? And when I say that, I mean like structures that are being built from the ground up, or would this also apply to changes in units, like a single-family home being purchased and converted into multi-apartments within that one house?
Excellent, good question. Did you say your name, by the way?
Oh, sorry, yeah, Yashka Winterling, and I do live here in Bangor.
Thank you, okay, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Would you like to answer that question?
Yep, so if
Thank
somebody
you.
is adding more units, they would fall under this. So they would need to add 1 space per additional unit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I would just like to say I am in support of this. I see a lot of the new developments being built and even some of the older ones with lots of empty parking spaces. And I don't really see many issues of overflow, except in very rare instances. So, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate your comments. Anyone else? Yes, it's Karen, right?
Again, my name is Karen Mary's daughter. I'm in support of this proposal. I'd be happy for you to go even further and eliminate minimums, but I'm in support of this proposal. And specifically about housing, if you're building new housing, parking adds a lot of expense to the development of housing, and therefore rents have to go up. And then affordability becomes a real issue. So it's a real preventer of housing. It also means you can't build as densely in your inner core if you have to provide off-street parking for all the people who might live there. You're sort of thwarting the idea of people taking transit or walking or riding their bikes if you continually provide access for every possible car that could be there. And the people who spoke earlier about worries about traffic with Lancaster Avenue, the new development, Broadway, Grandview. No, we don't want every person who lives in the center of the city to have a car. In fact, we'd like, lots more people to have less cars. So I think any reduction in requiring people to provide parking. I live right near the new Blueberry Ridge development out in Cape Heart. And so here's a place for seniors, many of whom can't drive or no longer own a car, and it's right on the bus line. I know I get off that bus stop on a regular basis. So I don't know how many parking spaces there are there. I haven't gone in to the ground to count it, but there's an ideal place where a builder might say, we don't need 30 parking spaces for 30 apartments for seniors on the bus line. So this, I assume, like this Grandview development, would it fall under your discretion with this land use management permit, for example, in terms of parking?
Sure, again, I believe so, but
Yes.
Officer Collette answer that question.
It would.
Yes,
by
yes.
development.
So Blueberry Ridge might well have fallen under that if it had been going on. So I support this, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I would say that there was a little bit of conversation when we first talked about this as to how low we could or would want to make that. This may be just the first step, but we hear that. Any other comments, questions from the public? No one on Zoom, no raised hands, last chance. Okay, so I'll close this item to public comment. And I would look to the board for any further discussion, or if not, I'd be happy to take a motion at this point. We've talked about this quite a bit. Recommending an ought to pass motion. Member Boucher.
I move, we recommend to the city council that the following ought to pass. To amend the land development code by reducing the minimum off-street parking spaces required for residential dwelling units from 1.5 spaces per unit to 1 space per unit, and to allow the planning board to authorize reductions in parking minimums for uses requiring land development permit.
Second.
Thank you. A second from Member Basnet. Roll call vote. And Member Saucier.
Yes.
Member Maher.
Yes.
Member Hayes.
Yes.
Member Brush.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
Member Basnet.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So a unanimous vote on this one as well. It passes. And we'll go on to agenda for next Monday's city council meeting. Appreciate your input, folks. On to the next item on the agenda, which is to amend the land development code, short-term rental licenses by clarifying the definitions of hosted and non-hosted short-term rentals. I would look to Planning Officer Collette for a staff presentation on this one.
Yep, so this is a pretty simple change, but it essentially gets back to some of the discussions that were had when the short-term rental ordinance was first passed. It was kind of the understanding that hosted rentals would be for people that are living on site, and it's their primary residence. And so currently, the definition of hosted says that they have to be on the premises when the rental is being operated. So this would change that to say it has to be their primary residence, and they have to show evidence that it is their primary residence, and then non-hosted would be the opposite of that. So, any questions?
Excellent, thank you. Does the board have any questions of staff?
So for properties that have a property management on-site or a staff member on-site that would be providing, they wouldn't fall within this.
No, it excludes property management, so it has to be somebody's primary residence that's living there.
The language of it, I was looking for it, and it's lost in this packet. It said the owner or there was another word. And I can't.
Operator.
Operator.
Yes.
Could you explain operator, how that would be different?
Yep. So an operator could theoretically be a tenant. So whoever is actually running the rental, if they're living there on site, it would still count as a hosted rental. And so that would be a situation with like a multi-unit building. And of course, the owner would have to provide their permission and show there's permission and everything. But so if it's a tenant operating it, the operator could technically be different than the owner. And that helps because there's case law out there. It's kind of complicated, but this helps kind of make it airtight legally,
So from my understanding, if it's okay for me to try and rephrase it, is an owner is renting to a tenant. The tenant has a house, for instance, and wants to have a short-term rental for like an ensuite that's a part of the house. That would be the operator in this case,
Yes.
the tenant, thanks.
yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions, staff? No? I will open this up to public comment, if there is any, on this item. This is change in definitions for short-term rental licenses. Public comment, seeing none on Zoom, I'm going to close that to public comment. Further review and comments by the board. And I will start on this one. First off, I want to thank Nadia for doing this, because if you remember, this was one of my issues back when we agreed to do this. I didn't like the way that was worded, and so this is exactly the change that I was looking for back when we originally approved the short-term rentals. I voted yes back then, but this was one part of those changes that I really didn't like. Secondly, I would just speak to Member Boucher's comment or question, because having seen myself quite a lot of smaller multi-units where often the owner gives a tenant or an occupant, which is a tenant, maybe reduced rent or free rent for them to be there and be the person to handle problems or concerns that the other tenants have. I think that is an operator type situation as well.
It could, but the intent of the ordinance is the tenant would be the person listing the rental, running the rental.
Okay.
You know.
So not quite the same necessarily. Yep.
Yeah, it depends on the situation.
Okay, thank you. Any other board comments or questions? If none, I would look for a motion.
Sure.
And again, I would recommend upon to pass. Member Saucier?
Let me piece this together in my brain here. I move that we recommend the Bangor City Council approve changes to the Land Development Code, Section 254, short-term rental licenses by clarifying the definition of hosted and non-hosted short-term rentals in accordance with the March 11th memo.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Member Brush. And a roll call vote. Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Basnet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So this one passes as well unanimously. And we'll move on to City Council next Monday evening. So now we move to the section of the agenda where we talk about land development permits. We have two of those this evening. The first one on the agenda is land development permit application for a major site development plan for construction of approximately 1 acre gravel storage pad with the potential for 15,600 square feet of storage buildings in the future at property located at 230 Beaumont Road. And this is map lot R38001 in the Urban Industry District, Rural Residence and Agricultural District. And the applicant owner is Beaumont Commercial Properties LLC, Rich Trott. The first thing we want to do here is staff has indicated completeness of this application and ready for board review. Fees have been documented and paid, and something I learned this evening is that a site review with no condition,
No conditional use.
no conditional use, thank
Yep.
you, doesn't require an advertising fee. And so if you were checking on this, which I was, there is zero advertising fees because they don't need to have any. So the applicant's standing has been confirmed. And so does the board members, do any board members have any concerns with applicant standing or the fees or the application itself being complete?
Chair,
Member Saucier?
I'm not sure if this is an issue or not, but I wanted to bring the attention that I am a customer of Rich Trott's business that does storage in this area. So it could have a potential for a conflict of interest.
Okay, so I kind of practiced this evening, so let's see if you can remember what I did. So
My company, my consulting business has, I maintain a storage unit in one of the storage units out at Beaumark. I pay full rate according to their schedule. I have never even met Mr. Trott in person, and I don't really perceive it to create a conflict for me. It's just sort of an auto pay thing that I use, but it's also, I definitely have an interest on the property.
there's no financial gain that you would receive by the approval or non-approval of this application?
No.
And no special interest that you have that any other member of the public couldn't just as well have if they wanted to?
Oh, I think it's.
So assuming anyone can rent a unit there?
Yep.
Okay. Member Brush?
I have a question on the mention of the buildings. We're not approving.
Hold on, can we deal with his conflict of interest though first?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I don't want to get there, but I think we should handle Josh's conflict of interest. Do the board members have any other comments on this? Because what I'll do is just ask for motion on Member Saucier's potential conflict of interest. Member Boucher?
Is it just renting a unit? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay, it's not like you do business with them.
No land development, no work like
Yeah.
that. Like I said, I've never even,
Yeah.
I've talked to him on the phone once, I think.
Chair. Solicitor Ennis, do you feel the need to say anything on this, or are we all set?
I would say I take a vote on it,
Yep.
so yeah, entertaining a motion, but other than that, if you guys want more of a definition of special interest or anything, I have the ordinance right in front of me, but.
Thank you. I'd leave it up to the board, but Member Basnet?
Chair, I'll move a motion that Member Saucier has no conflict of interest in this case.
Thank you.
Second.
And I have a second from Member Maher. Any other questions or comments? I'll go with a roll call vote. Member Maher?
Yes. Yes, no conflict.
The motion we have is
That he has
There
no
is no
conflict.
there is no conflict, and so we're voting yes,
Yes.
no conflict. Thank you. Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes, no conflict.
Member Basnet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, no conflict as well, so it's unanimous. Member Saucier is okay to stay involved in this particular project. Member Brush?
So, what's the process for approving the buildings? We're
So-
not doing that tonight, I take it, we are just doing the gravel pad.
Technically, the buildings are included in this application, so you would be approving them, even though they're not proposed to be built at this time, they could be in the future. So,
Would they revisit the planning board with any site development
not
plans?
unless their approval
necessary?
expires.
Or changes.
So, yeah, or if something changes, that would come back. But this can happen sometimes when a development is phased. You can approve multiple phases at once, even though they're gonna build it out at a later time.
Okay, so in essence, we are also approving 4 buildings to go on
Yes.
that site.
Correct.
Yeah. Which, if I may say, is why lighting standards and things like that are included in your packet. So,
But they don't have to.
they don't have to
They don't have to.
build out,
Right.
Right.
correct? Member Bush?
Is it still 6 months that the construction would have to start on that?
It
on the
actually
buildings?
is within a year that it has to start, and then it has to finish within 2 years.
Have I been saying that wrong?
Sorry, I haven't caught it if you did.
Okay. Okay, so, any other board questions?
Chair.
Yes, where we were at, member Saucier.
Yep.
What I was gonna say is, I think what threw me is that we went with a conflict of interest. We had a motion on the floor to approve the completeness of the application with a second. And then the conflict of interest concern came up, which is appropriate, that should come up in the beginning. But since we've dealt with that, we still have a standing motion of completeness on this property. So I need to do a vote on that. The motion was that this was, the completeness was acceptable. Can someone confirm this for me? We did have a motion and a second on this,
That it was complete?
that it was complete.
I actually don't recall you having that.
No, okay, thank you.
Called for a motion, but no.
I called for a motion, but no one,
I guess
okay,
not,
so
yeah.
I would like to get one then. Would anyone like to give me one?
Do you want to have a separate motion on each of these 3 items?
I would like to start with completeness and we go to public comment and then we will get to the standards.
Okay, but under procedural background, there's 3 items. Do you want a motion to approve all 3?
All three.
All 3. Okay, I will make a motion that the application is deemed complete on March 19th, 2004, that the applicant has paid all the applicable fees, and that the proposed project is a major site development.
Excellent, thank you. Do I have a second on that? Member Bazinet, thank you. A roll call vote. Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Mahar?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Bazinet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we are approving completeness of the application. I probably should have made that a little bit more clear to board members, but although it sits at the front of the standards that we will talk about in a minute, it is really, in my mind at least, more applicable to consider completeness of an application before we hear from the applicant or have public discussion, because if the application is not complete, we shouldn't be considering it at all. So with that move, then I would like the applicant to come forward and present the application.
It's okay if I move on these chairs.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Just want to start by thanking everybody for being here tonight. Really appreciate your time. My name is Lucy Feeney. I am a civil engineer with Haley Board. I'm here tonight on behalf of Beaumar Commercial Properties LLC for a proposed site amendment to 230 Beaumar Road in Bangor. So as Mr. Chairman mentioned, we are proposing to develop a slightly, almost an acre gravel pad with the potential of developing additional storage unit buildings on this pad in the future. The applicant is aware that if the time lapse for the permit expires, that he would potentially need to come back to planning board for either the extension of the site plan application permit or the building permits if that surpasses as well. So just a little context, this site is currently a self-storage facility off of the Beaumark Road, which is in the urban industrial district. And Mr. Trott is looking to expand with another gravel pad for additional self-storage buildings. As of right now, as mentioned, this is strictly looking to be just gravel pads with the intention of expanding in the future. That being said, the impervious coverage will not change from what it's being proposed as a gravel pad to if it were to be changed to pavement and buildings. We are not proposing any new water or sewer utilities as they're not needed. The self-storage units kind of act as an unmanned business. There is a proposed gate going in. Excuse me, I just don't want to drop the papers again.
You can roll that podium a little bit.
Oh, okay. That would be
Yep.
Thank you. So we are proposing a new gate along this location for the existing buildings that are right here that are actually accessed right from the Beaumark Road. There's another gate into the facility, along with extending electrical services from Mr. Trott's existing office building for the development for underground electric, which would be utilized to power the building for lights and then also any security cameras that may be needed. For the kind of stormwater management piece of the site, we are proposing to basically match existing drainage patterns. We have proposed that the pad be drained towards this side of the property, which will drain into an open ditch system, and then ultimately make it to a level spreader, which would go into a forested buffer, which is an improved method for treating stormwater runoff. We have filed a stormwater permit application with the Maine DEP, which is also required due to the amount of impervious that Mr. Trott is proposing to construct. We have recently the application has been accepted, and we are waiting to hear back comments from the DEP regarding that. At this time, we have met all of the standards applicable for this development and have met town's comments. A couple of the comments that we did receive from town staff was in regards to the stormwater management on site. One of those items being the capacity of an existing pipe under the units here. So right now, a lot of the runoff from these two existing areas drain down into an open ditch that heads to an 8-inch pipe that goes underneath this building and then outlets to a wetland. We have designed this, like I mentioned, to kind of direct the stormwater this way. So we're accommodating for the existing drainage from both of these lots, but not adding anything to it. So one of the concerns was around the capacity of this pipe here, which, like I said, there should not be an increase of runoff that would be heading to that pipe. So at this time, we do not have any major concerns regarding there being issues in the future, as it seems to be handling the amount of stormwater that is heading there now. The other comment that came from the engineering department was in regards to the ditch along this side of the pad. They were looking for a little bit more clarification on the depth of that, so we suggested adding some spot grades to the plan. Rather than doing just a couple spot grades, we actually brought up, there's a berm on the back side of this ditch to help keep the water within this channel and direct it this way, so we actually brought that berm up a little bit more. So that really summarizes the comments that were from staff, and I'd be more than happy to address any comments from the planning board at this time.
Excellent, thank you. Ms. Feeney, please stay up with us.
Yeah.
And staff comments at this point?
Not at this point.
Okay, thank you. Board member questions of the applicant at this time? Yes,
So-
member Jonas?
Forgive me.
It's okay.
Who maintains that drainage ditch?
So that is on Rich's property, so he maintains it as part of his private property.
Good. Yep, thank you.
Member Saucier?
As far as the phasing of this, the stormwater improvements will be done when the gravel pad goes in, regardless of when the buildings go?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct. Yep.
I have a question with regard to, I saw it on sheet 36, but I think it may have been on, I'm sorry, it was sheet 36 of my packet, that probably doesn't help you much. It is the drawing which shows the property zone and then shows the height restrictions and so forth. Do you recall? You don't have to turn the page if you don't want to, but. Yes, that's the one. Thank you.
Yes, I did bring both, just in case, but this one is a little bit harder to see the actual development piece.
Yeah, but we have a copy of it in our packet, so that's fine.
So what is the question?
So, it was troubling to me.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I can give you a good question, but from our perspective, and as we're going to go through the standards, I felt like it was a little bit awry. And maybe Planning Officer Collette would like to speak to this as well. But it says there that the zone, are the two zones that you've noted. No one's brought this up yet, but I think it's important for the board to understand. I believe where it's RRA is just on that far left corner.
Yep.
And then a little bit maybe down on the right. It's just a small couple of pieces, right?
So if you were to look at the GIS mapping, which I don't believe we actually brought in the line work.
I didn't see it either, but I looked it up.
Actually, no, I don't think that's it. It's essentially a small, actually here it is, this line
What is it?
here
Okay, yeah.
it kind of looks like a fence, but it actually has Z's on it and it shows on either side the UID and then the RR
Okay.
and A. And so this small chunk here is actually what falls into the residential zoning, which obviously does not impact what's going on over here. And I don't believe that there are any, so I guess one thing to note, so this is still UID here. We are abutting another UID zone, so the buffer requirement here is very small, so we are grading into that area, but we're not required to maintain a screening buffer since it's not a residential zone. But down here, it looks like we are proposing something within the buffer, but this is actually
Just the buffer.
proposed as a forested buffer, so it would remain as its current land coverage, which means it would still stand as a buffer for this residential zone over here.
And I think that's what I kind of needed to get to, is that what's noted on there is that you have two zones. You have the UID zone, you have the RRA zone, and then further down you say there's no height restriction, which there would be in the RRA zone, but there's no actual building in the RRA zone. The building is in UID only. And I'm not sure the way that the blueprint says it makes it exactly clear as to what you said.
Yeah, okay.
But you've now said it publicly, so I'm gonna hold you to it.
Thank you, for the record.
If you or a staff felt it better said somewhere else, I mean, I'm okay with it the way it is, but I just wanna be clear what we're talking about here.
Yep, and we do always check the zoning too, when we're
I'm
reviewing
sure
site
if
plan.
somebody looked at it,
Yeah.
it just, when I saw the blueprint at first,
Yeah.
it seemed somewhat deceiving, so
Yeah.
that was my only question.
Yeah, and honestly, to that point, it is sometimes hard to, like, from our perspective, like, we want to include obviously all the applicable zoning and information that falls within this property, but sometimes when it's not applicable to what's actually being developed, we find sometimes that it can be a little confusing for a
Right.
reviewer. So it kind of leaves it up to us, like, best discretion on what to provide and
Right.
what to not, so yeah, we understand your
Yeah,
concern.
thank you, because, later on, we're gonna vote on whether this satisfies height and impervious surface ratios, and it
Does
I
for the
believe it
UID
does, and you're
right?
saying it does,
Yeah.
and it shows it does, but that makes it a little bit confusing whether it
Yes.
does or not, so thank you for that. With no other questions from the board, I would open this project up to public comment. At this time, Ms. Feeney, you can settle in if you'd like. and we'll see if there are any public comments. Raise of hand if there are any. I'm gonna go quick on this, if there is none, because nobody's raising their hand. And so I will close the public comment period of this particular item. Do any board members have any issues other than what's already been brought up before we move on to the standards and voting on the standards on this project? Because if not, we will get right going with the standards. That's fine, thank you. No comments or questions. I would look for a motion on the first standard, which is part 1 of the project meets the requirements of Articles 2 through 12, and it would be item 1 that should be read first.
Chair, are those highlighted on the, I think they're highlighted in the packet, are they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Member Brown?
Motion.
Yep.
I move that the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 6, and 9, the applicant has satisfied the development code sections 165-33-1 requirements surrounding erosion and sediment control.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Member Basnet, thank you. Roll call vote on this one. Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Barash?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Basnet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Can I have a motion on item 2?
Chair, as a point of order,
Member
Or-
Boucher?
point of clarification, did we already make a motion that this was a major site development?
We did. It's part of the completeness.
Thank you.
But thank you.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'd rather have you check. I'm gonna talk about that later, but I'd really rather have you ask and check. I almost did a vote without a motion. So we've gotten out of control a couple of times. So item number 2, motion on that one.
Chair.
Member Saucier?
I move that the board find that based on exhibits 2 and 6, the applicant has satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-66 by providing a transitional yard for buildings abutting a residential district.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Brush, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
And Member Basnet?
Yes.
Item 2 is passed. Item 3, do I have a motion on this one?
Chair,
Member Basnet?
I'll move the board finds that based on Exhibit 2 and 6, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-67 by providing adequate setbacks and screening for outdoor display and storage areas.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Marhart, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Basnet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item 3 passes. Item 4, could I have a motion on that one?
Chair,
Member Basnet?
I'll move the board finds that based on Exhibit 2 and 10, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code Section 165-81 requiring appropriate lighting in accordance with regulations on intensity, direction, and height.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Saucier, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Basnet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item 5?
Chair. Oh. Yes, okay. I move that the board finds that based on Exhibit 2, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code, Section 165-82, requiring adequate fire protection.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Basnet, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Basnet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item 5 has passed, and that's all of part 1. Part 2, project meets the district site development standards under Article 19. Could I have a motion on that item?
Mr. Chair,
Member Brush?
the board finds that based on Exhibit 2, the applicant satisfied Section 165-135 of the Land Development Code regarding height limits, floor area ratio, impervious impervious surface ratio, and buffer yards.
Second.
Excellent. Thank you, and a second by Member Saucier. Roll call vote, Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Mahar?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Bazinet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Part 2 passes. Part 3, the project meets requirements of 16596, Zone Urban Industry District.
Chair,
Member Bazinet?
I'll move the board finds that based on the findings made in parts 1 and 2 of this document, project meets the requirements of section 165-96, point B, for uses within the urban industry district, UID.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Saucier, thank you. Before we go to a vote for our clarification, Planning Officer Collette, should we add RRA to that?
Well, this actual project doesn't fall within RRNA, so
Okay, so we're okay just calling it UID. All right, good, thank you.
Chair,
So, yes.
should we make a
Member
comment about the pending, the water approval?
DEP.
DEP approval that's going on? Yeah, sorry. Is that just at the point, if we make it to the decision?
It should be conditional, right?
Conditional on,
in the past, we haven't typically asked for a condition on the DEP stormwater permitting just because
yes,
it happens often where.
Outside of us, right?
Yeah, it's outside of us, and we just ask them to show us that they applied, because they have to get stormwater
Yes,
permitting.
of course,
from us.
yeah, I understand, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
because again, I encourage those kinds of questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on part 3, a roll call vote on that item. Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Marhar?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Bazinet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Part 3 passes. Part 4, project meets requirements of 165-114 land development approval standards. Item 1, can I have a motion on that item?
Chair.
Member Saucier.
I move that the board finds that based on exhibits 2 and 6, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114B's requirement that the proposed parking and loading layout are arranged in a reasonable and safe configuration.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
I've got Member Brush on the second. Thank you. Roll call vote. Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Marhar?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Bazinet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item 1 passes. Item 2, can I have a motion on item 2?
Chair,
Member Bazinet?
I'll move the board finds that based on exhibit 2 and 6, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, section 165-114C's requirement that all proposed access drives from the site to any public right-of-way are reasonably necessary and safe.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Saucier, thank you. A roll call vote. Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Marhar?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Bazinet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item 2 passes. Item 3. I have a motion on item 3.
Chair.
Member Saucier?
I move that the board finds that, based on exhibits 2, 7, 14, and 19, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114D's requirement that stormwater runoff from the proposed development will not have an unreasonable adverse effect on abutting or downstream properties or protected resources, and that all downstream channels or municipal stormwater collection systems have adequate capacity to carry the flow without significant negative effects.
Excellent, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second?
From Member Bazinet, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Marhar?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Unanimous vote. Item 3. Item 4, can I have a motion on that one?
Chair.
Member Saucier?
I move that the board finds that, based on exhibit 2, 6, and 10, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114E's requirement that all outdoor storage areas are situated and properly screened to avoid adverse effects on adjacent properties, and that the proposed outdoor lighting is designed to avoid unreasonable light pollution.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Maher, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
And Member Bazinet?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. So item 4 passes unanimous. Item 5, a motion on item 5.
Chair?
Everyone wants one. Member Bazinet, I think you were first.
Okay. I'll move the board finds that based on Exhibit 2 and 6, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, Section 165-114F's requirements for landscaping.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Member Brush, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Bazinet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item 6.
Mr. Chair,
Member Brush?
There you go.
I move that the board finds that based on Exhibits 2 and 6, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, Section 165-114G's requirement that the location of the building meets all required setbacks and is situated to avoid unreasonable adverse effects on adjacent properties or public rights of way.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second?
Member Bazinet, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Bazinet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we have passed unanimously all of the standards. We come to a decision, which is the last item. Could I have a motion on the decision?
Chair?
Member Bazinet?
I'll move the board finds that the project meets the requirements for a land development permit for a major site development, and therefore the board grants the land development permit for the proposed project.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Member Brush, thank you. A roll call vote. Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Bazinet?
Yes.
The project passes. And so the next step would be code office. Well, Mayor, you understand, I'm sure. And we appreciate your presentation.
Thank you guys for your time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's that item on the agenda. That leads us to the last item on the agenda. I apologize to you guys who had to wait to be the last one, but it is what it is. And so this is a land development permit application, major site development plan and conditional use for construction of a 4,300 square foot car wash building and 23,836 square feet of pavement for vehicle circulation, parking, and vacuum stations, plus other site improvements at property located at 727 and 729 Broadway. And this is on map lot R41020 in the Shopping and Personal Service District. The applicant is Noria Energy Retail Incorporated, doing business as Golden Nozzle Car Wash. The owner is Barnbro. And let's get to completeness first before you come up, okay? So the staff has indicated completeness of this application and ready for board review. The fees are documented and paid. The applicant's standing is confirmed. Does the board have any concerns with these issues? No issues there. I see none. No conflicts of interest. I see none. Roll call. I need a motion on the application completeness, which would be the first items in your before the standards. The first, what is it? Yep. 1, 2. Only 2 are green, but I think we should do all 3. And I've got that on page 3 of 8 of the,
Page 1 of 500.
yeah. I'm not sure what it is. Oh, wait, maybe I am sure what it is.
I bookmarked it.
No, I don't know. It's page 478 of the packet. So,
There we go.
on 500.
500.
I do have that.
Thank you.
We have a motion for completeness. And don't let me rush you. If you need to think about it or,
I think we're trying to work our way down to.
yeah, to get there, yeah,
So, yeah, mine was on 487.
right. Member Marno.
I will make a motion that the application was deemed complete on March 19th, 2024.
In 2 and 3, please.
Oh, okay, at the same time, okay.
Yep.
And that the applicant paid all applicable fees, that would be in Exhibit 3. And that the proposed project is a major site development and conditional use.
Excellent, thank you. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Member Basnet, thank you. Roll call vote, Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Marno?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Lucian?
Yes.
Member Basnet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, so we have a vote on completeness of the application, so I ask the applicant or their representative to come forward to the podium and present this to us.
We have multiple planning boards.
You need to talk to Lucy about how you did that.
Good evening, my name is Fred Marsh from Plymouth Engineering, representing Indiana Energy, DBA is Golden Nozzle, and if you represent us from Golden Nozzle here, if something gets technical, I get stumped. I'll jump in this real quickly, I hope. Thanks for your patience too, I know it's getting late, but I'll try to not spend too much time going backwards. But some of you may remember last fall, we were here before the board for removal of a contract zone for this site. This site was originally developed and approved in 2007 when the bank building was built on Broadway with the drive-through. Since then, the bank has bought out basically its lease, and that building's being converted into a clinic, PT or something of that nature, which is not a conditional use, it's permitted use. And so in the process and pre-application meetings and discussions with the city, in the past, let me go back with the removal of contract zone. The contract zone conditions were adopted on this parcel, as I mentioned, in 2007, because Broadway in this area of Bangor was considered a little differently than it is now. And I'm not repeating that whole evening, but basically land uses leapfrogged over this and become much more commercial out. So the intention was that with the conditions that were on that contract zone, potential leasing or developing of the remaining undeveloped portion of the parcel was pretty much, I wouldn't say impossible, but very difficult, which is why it's been vacant for all these years. There've been a lot of schemes, but nobody bid. So with that restriction thing, we met with the city and talked, and I think it was way back, Golden Nozzle approached the city back in March and June in some preliminary meetings. Issues that were identified obviously were traffic, because Broadway is very sensitive with a lot of traffic. You know, with this project, add to it, there was a traffic permit on the site with the drive-through. Goral Palmer did a full analysis and showed that with the credit, I would say, for the drive-in bank portion, offset to a certain extent the increase produced by the car wash, and ended up, I think it's like 14 trips or something. It's a very minor increase over what is currently now. Again, that's statistical. So we moved ahead with that. And again, John Terrio's looked over it, city staff's looked over it, DOT's looked over it, and they're all happy. Then the second hurdle was stormwater. We applied in end of January, about the same time we submitted our site development plan. And DEP, technically, their engineers reviewed it. They've signed off on it, so it's sitting in the queue for the permit writers to write and go to Augusta. So they don't see any issue, it's just bureaucratic process, and that should come out by the end of April. So I'll jump in quickly, real quick. Chairman Reese already described the project. Construction is a single tunnel, what they call a single tunnel drive-in, not unlike, the one that was built out on Stillwater Avenue, which you approved. It's a different thing, but it's the same system. You drive in, you go on a track, and you go through. So the tunnel, actually, with the equipment, is about 3,000 square feet, and there's another 1,300 for machinery and pumps and filters and all kinds of stuff. The car wash does recycle about 80% of the water. There are 3 different settling tanks and an oil water separator thing, so it doesn't consume as much water as would be like traditional car washes where it just all goes into the city sewer system. And I guess I can describe, as you come into the site from Broadway, we're assuming, the traffic modeling was assuming that the majority of cars would come in at the signal lanes intersection of Broadway, the development, and Hudson Avenue. There is a secondary entrance from Hillside Avenue. That's the way that the project was originally developed, with the connector through there. There may be some folks come in through that way, but there's not a huge amount. We're not anticipating a lot. So you basically come in straight off the traffic light. You go in. You can take a right or straight ahead, and you can go into the vacuums. There are vacuum systems. And then you go around, there's a double row. I think we calculated roughly about 40 to 48 cars can stack inside. I think that would be your fondest dreams, if that many could be on a continual basis, but there's adequate capacity that would severely doubt that functionally the cars and waiting to go into the car wash would be out onto Broadway. So that said, the other thing that I probably should talk about is appropriate for the conditional use. So let's go through that kind of checklist, because that's part of a major portion of it. So really, the car wash is pretty simple, pretty much, because you come in, you can either go to the vacuum, as I said before, go around. There's 2 pay stations, and they throttle down to 1, get in line, go through the tunnel, come out, and go on their very way. Conditional use, because this is a drive-in use, is conditional under the land use ordinance. Standards, I hope you don't, should I read these? I just want to be clear whether you want me to do that or not.
I'm not sure you need to. I would almost rather, for the sake of time, if it's all right, if we let our members ask about standards, if they have them.
It meets all those standards, at least in our humble opinion.
Yeah.
So I think maybe in an effort for time, I'll just shut up and sit down and answer questions.
Sure. Don't sit down, but we'll see what we have for questions. So before we get to questions for the applicant, are there any comments from the staff? Yes, ma'am.
I mentioned this to the chair earlier, but as you all know, we sent you the revised plans with the revised landscaping list. So we had previously recommended a condition that they remove the 2 invasive species and replace them, which they did. So just wanted to note that for those 2 findings in here that reference that, so.
Thank you. We'll get to that. We're gonna have to remember that when we get to our standards, because you said there's 2 standards or 1 standard in the decision?
So there's 1 standard, when you go to the land development approval standards, it's mentioned in there as far as landscaping, and then it's mentioned in the final decision.
Right.
As far as making
Yep, so 2 places. We'll have to kind of keep on top of that as we go through our standards. Thank you. And that was the species issue. If any of you are familiar with the couple of conditions that we were worried about, one was there was a couple of listed invasive species, which I guess was disputable, but nonetheless, we don't like them on our list, so they were taken off. And revisions were made, which we received, board members received last Friday. So I'm curious if board members have any questions of the applicant before we move to public comments.
Quick question.
Member Bazinet? Could you come on back up, Mr. Marshall?
Sorry to have to get you to come back up just for such a quick question. So my understanding of reading the prints, you have ingress from both Hillside Avenue and from Broadway.
Correct.
And the Hillside traffic will funnel around the car wash and then enter into the stream of traffic to enter the car wash. Okay, that's it, thank you.
Member Jones?
I'm also a little sensitive to traffic in that area because my mother lives not far from there and I avoid Broadway. And I've also was listening to the comments made earlier by the folks regarding traffic on Grandview, and Grandview is right adjacent to that. And I'm wondering when these traffic studies are done, and this is maybe more a question for staff and the team, if we're taking into account just this one project or the other development projects that are also going on in the area at the same time. So for instance, just out Broadway, right near St. Joe's is that new development that's going in with the additional traffic that's going there. Broadway is the major artery from the north on 15. I'm very concerned about the traffic in this particular area. It's already terrible.
I wish John was here tonight to answer that question. I'm pretty sure we have gotten requests when people are doing traffic analyses, they look at projects in the area, but I would defer to Fred because he might know more about that, so.
I think I'm not a traffic engineer, but I was involved in the discussions. There was quite a lot of discussions between Randy Dutton of Goral Palmer and John Terrio about the scope of the traffic. And I think there was even discussions with the MDOT, the traffic district engineer. And they did traffic counts at over, I think, 3 or 4 days on Broadway at different times. And they went out, normally it would have just been at the intersection, but I think they went out, I know they went out 2 or 3 intersections beyond. So to get a better idea of what was going on, and that coupled with, I believe they do know, took an account when John talked about stuff that's coming in and what's going on, so. But at the end of the day, the actual, increase by this project is very, very minor. I mean, I know every little bit is something, but it's not of a monumental either to the peak hour or the daily traffic. I'm not trying to be glib about it, but it just, I don't have those numbers, but I know that all that stuff was taken into account because I was concerned about it. And John was very sensitive about this intersection because he knows there's some issues, and I think, in all honesty, he expected the numbers to come out a lot worse, but they weren't. That's all I can say. Fortunately, yeah.
Thank you.
So, and in the end of the day, there was no, if they had decreased what you probably all heard, the level of service or anything impacted the traffic, DOT would have probably required some improvements, either signalization or lane or whatever, but they didn't.
Yeah. I know what you're asking. I almost hate to take any more of that, but I mean, in some sense, it's really what he said, a snapshot or a picture of time. Every project has to prove itself.
Right.
But I'm not sure it's possible to take a picture in time when the other project isn't done yet.
Understand. On the other hand, we know that other project is moving forward.
Sure. Yeah.
So it is
And I
incumbent
think-
upon us.
I think
and
John Terry.
John could answer that, sure.
Yeah, and John is probably thinking about that as well.
Yeah.
I have a question which kind of goes along with the whole traffic thing, just out of curiosity. It's not quite the same question she had. I'm gonna see if I can find it, but on page 162 of our packet, it says that traffic will decrease, and I didn't understand why it said that. I mean, I can't imagine that this is gonna cause traffic to decrease. Traffic generated by the whole parcel will decrease AM peak hour adjacent to street by 17 trips. Do you recall that? And
I don't know off the top of my head, but that would have been something that the traffic engineer would have done.
This is in the project narrative. So it's the second page of the project narrative. And so maybe, that's why I'm curious. I wonder if this is an incorrect statement.
Perhaps it's a decrease on traffic on
Maybe.
Broadway
Or maybe only, yeah.
From when the bank was
going
there.
up to
And maybe
Hillside.
that's what he meant.
Yeah.
Do you have that narrative?
I do.
On page 2, right at the top there, there's a paragraph that says, traffic generated by the whole parcel will decrease AM peak hour at adjacent
The one
street.
I had would decrease in the AM peak hour, but it would increase in the PM by 18 trips and increase on the Saturday peak hour. So the AM, that, I took that straight out of his report. the
Okay.
numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, he had me puzzled there for a minute, but
Yeah.
yes.
So it had me puzzled for a minute, that's why I asked.
I think that's the way it's modeled and
Yeah.
that generally, I may be wrong, but I think car washes aren't
That busy in the
busy in
morning
the
during the
morning,
week, whereas
more
maybe a
during the day
business
and
would
then
be or
maybe
something, yeah.
not.
Okay, okay. Don't go away, Fred, yet. I was curious that there wasn't more vegetation looked at or increased vegetation on the end bay of the building, kind of directly towards the dentist's office. There's quite a bit of open space there. I know there is some current vegetation there, some trees and whatnot, but it didn't appear, from what I could see, that there was a lot. And
Well, part of that is, and I probably could go to L two. Part of that is because you have the exiting of the cars. You're talking about here as we go to Broadway?
right,
Yeah.
but if you see those two light poles, behind those two light poles, there's just a big open space there.
Yeah, that's an existing meadow. We just put 2 street trees in there. We weren't really, because the woods comes down and buffers Dr. Tozer's
Yeah,
project
right.
office.
I mean, this is just my own judgment. I'm not trying to say this is any professional, opinion, but it seems to me where the dentist's office is just on the other side, the dentist's office parking lot, and then the dentist's office is just on the other side of those trees, and it's a fairly sparse group of trees, that there wouldn't be a little bit more vegetation added in that, is what you call the field, in essence, just to kill the sound coming from the end of that bay. I mean, that's where your dryers are gonna be, so
Yeah.
that's gonna be the noisiest end of the bay, I would think.
We can add north of it.
Yeah,
It's on as a condition.
I would certainly recommend it. Yeah.
Sure.
And I would leave it to you guys' judgment how to do that, but I would certainly recommend that. And that's the only other thing I had. Does the board have any other questions or comments? Member Saucer?
Yeah, I like having the long queue length there for storage of cars where they're waiting, but what happens, and I ask this because I've done it before, I've been in a line waiting for a car wash and decided I didn't want to wait any longer and I had to bail out, and it doesn't seem like there's any bailout provision here.
Well, there is to a certain extent. The only thing is you end up having to really go all the way around and then you have to go back through. There's an emergency where the loading zone is. There's kind of an escape lane, but probably by the time you get there, since you've already paid, you might as well go through. But there isn't, yeah. That was a conscious decision not to put another, not to drive traffic, but conscious decision not to put a second curb cut on Hillside Avenue. We really didn't want to do that. That wasn't discussed with the city, but we know past experience and with Hillside Avenue, that there wouldn't be a desire to have people dumping out.
Chair, I have a quick question.
Member Saucer? Are you all set?
Yeah, I guess so. So
Sorry.
this is, I can see what's gonna happen though is, I don't know, fender benders or something like that when somebody tries to do it, or creating confusion in there. Or they're just stuck. I guess maybe that's a business decision too.
No, we have 56 car washes. That's not an issue.
If you could repeat what he said, because he's kind of off mic.
Smitty said that they have 56 car washes and they haven't had any of those issues. They haven't had any problem with that. So I take their operation of that many car washes, they probably know, they do know.
Thank you. Member Bazinet.
So what do you do when a member, let's say a prospective customer gets past the pay point and they have a vehicle that will not meet the standard for it to go through the tunnel, but they've already got past the pay point, okay? They're in that, left-hand swing.
Something height-wise.
Height-wise, rack-wise on the truck, or, we're in Maine, and
Yeah, come on up.
how do you get that vehicle out of line?
This is Richard Smith from.
Richard Smith from the Re-Energy.
Thank you.
So, great question. Well, we have the escape lane right here.
Is that where the loading dock is?
Yeah, the
Loading zone
load dock's
is?
right here, but we also have about height, we have bars at
Yeah.
the pay stations. So if their car wasn't going to get to go in, they would hit that bar.
Well, people do and have, and.
Yeah, and they might have a big thing on the tailgate to get the employees on
Right,
safe.
right.
But we'll just, where is the, I can't see the street.
It's on the left,
Yes, right here.
yeah.
So it's right at the entrance.
So you're gonna make them take a hard left
Yeah, and then go that way.
and go out through the vacuum area.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board questions?
I have one.
Member Boucher?
Yeah, for staff. The water discussion, I was hoping we could talk through that a little bit more, because I know there was an original issue identified around capacity, but then it was noted that there's a project planned in that area that would be expanding the capacity.
Right, yep, I did mean to mention that, as far as sewer capacity. So, the wastewater department, we let them know about all the pending projects, they know about the ones that are under construction, and then, and this one as well, and so they went out in the field and looked at the capacity out there, and did note there's, a choke point where, the pipe, I think, needs to be upgraded in size. And so they do intend to, I believe, work on that this summer. So that's why we did request the condition that adequate sewer capacity be available when they do make the sewer connection to this project.
I'll clarify that a little bit. I mean, Jeff, exactly right, there's a choke point, and it goes like from, I'll say 18 to, or 24 to 18, then back up to 24. Why that was ever done, who knows, but, the project is designed, it's budgeted, it's been bid, and I believe they were hoping that they were gonna get, that's one of the, we had a meeting with them, and they were hoping we were not gonna be built open before that project was done, but they were reasonably assured that they're gonna be done by the time the golden nozzle opens.
Thank you. So that answers where I was going, was wondering if the project had already been scoped and planned independent of this project, of this permit
And I
request.
guess our only concern is that the city in good faith does this, because it impacts anything else in the Broadway sewer area. I mean, it has a huge impact. I think that's one of the real reason it was budgeted and bid and awarded.
Okay, any other questions for Fred at this moment? Member Bazinet?
You were referring to sewer capacity, correct?
Yeah.
My second question is, water pressure won't be affected? There's plenty of water supply coming into that area?
The water district didn't express any concerns with that.
There's a, I think it's a 6 or 8 inch main that comes up from Hillside Avenue. So they didn't feel there was any issue with it.
Okay, just the wastewater end of it is the, okay. Thank you.
I did have another question, I'm sorry.
Okay, member.
The road that comes in past the bank and over to the car wash, is that a private way or is that a?
Yes, that's a private way.
Okay.
That was built as part of the whole block development.
Yeah. That was it.
And the reason it zigs is because the city did not want to have a straight cut through.
Oh, sure.
Honestly, when it was originally done. Was that,
Thank you, Fred. No other board questions. I'm going to move on to public comments. If there are any public comments or questions, yes, ma'am?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name's Laura Reedy. I'm married to John Tozer. We're both dentists in Bangor. We own 743 Broadway, dental clinic there. To give you a little bit of history, in 2007, this man reminded me of the year I couldn't remember. We had given up a right-of-way that we had onto Broadway directly to the dental office. In agreement, we were given access to, or right-of-way to this road that is there now, that is right off Broadway. That road was originally not in that location in 2007. It was moved closer to our property. We did not realize how much the road would move over, and it's made a problem for our property in that you have to really go up a ramp, and that ramp is not, or the grade to getting on into the dental office is so high that people often bottom out as they're leaving the property. But we really couldn't do anything about that because the road was put through, it was agreed on by the committees involved, and it still is a problem. The way that they have drawn the property lines here, I guess not knowing, I was looking for perhaps some reassurance that road, I didn't have access to this before we came in, and I apologize, I don't know where I would have gotten it. My husband was planning to be here and had an emergency, so I'm here in his place. But so we're hoping that this road, A, would not move any closer because it's already a problem. And, we had plenty of access, but as I said, we gave up that entrance to Broadway in 2007. And now I heard this man, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Fred. I heard Fred say that, there's going to be some traffic. I'm a little concerned that the traffic could potentially block patients from getting out of their appointment. And there is no other access in and out of our dental office. So those were concerns. I assume that they'll be addressed properly, but we would need some assurances that we can still use the property as a dental office without significant cost to us.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Any other public? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Heidi Godso, and I'm Executive Director of Penobscot Foundation for Developmental Services. And we own the property directly adjacent to this development proposal, which I received a copy of the full application. I think it's a really well done plan. However, like many others, I'm concerned about traffic. The property owned by Penobscot Foundation is leased to Amicus, which serves at least 50 very disabled adults per day in a building adjacent to this property. And those people spend a lot of time outdoors. They have bicycles that they ride around our property, and they walk down the street. So traffic is a concern of ours. When we originally built the building, it was a nice sleepy little street, quiet. It seems to have become the place to develop in Bangor. So as you continue looking at this area, I appreciated your comment that you have to look at the whole area and what's happening to it. When Bangor High School lets out, at the end of the day, there is I don't know, some kind of a Indy 500 down Hillside Avenue. So we already have a problem with that. We have a problem with people turning around in our driveway. And there's just a concern that the city needs to look at traffic on this very narrow, small road that may have much more traffic in the future. when you consider the full impact of the development. Thank you.
Ms. Godso, if you could, I don't know if you feel comfortable looking at that blueprint or not, but if you do, could you just explain where your property would be compared to? It's up there,
Oh,
okay.
here it is, this.
Yes, thank you, Fred, that's helpful that you pointed that out.
That one.
Thank you for your comments.
That.
Yes, sir.
Hello, all you patient people. My name is Steve Godso. We lived here for 40 years. I was a K-12 director of math at Bangor High. This is only anecdotal information. Where we moved to in Portland on Forest Avenue, which is congested, going into Allen, there's a car wash there. It's going to be larger than this one. They have gas and they have handheld washing, but they have a lot of vacuums. I'm a proud unlimited member of that car wash. And there'll be 15 to 20 cars lined up to go through. And they exit onto Forest Avenue, which already is very congested. So I'm in favor of car washes. They drove another car wash off just down the street, drove it out of business. But it's going to be more traffic, I would think. I know you have the one in Stillwater that's impressive. But just saying in that case, it added a lot to the traffic. And I wouldn't have anticipated that. Someone should have, but there's a lot of traffic right there coming out of the car wash. Everyone can maneuver and do it okay, but just be prepared for more traffic.
Thank you, appreciate your comments. Any other public comments on this project? If not, I'll close the public comments. And Mr. Marshall, would you like to come on back up and comment at all on those comments that just, you know?
No, I'll happily come up, but I really don't have any specific rebuttal because.
Can I say something?
Sure, come on up too as well, that's fine.
I believe he was talking about a car wash down Portland Bowling with the gas station.
And before you start, it's always helpful if you just say who you are again, because this is all recorded.
Ray Energy Gold Mountain Car Wash.
Thank you, that's all right.
He's talking about like a car wash, I used to work for 45 years. But they have a gas station, totally different operation. They have self-serve bays on their property, they have a car wash, and they have the free vacuums. We don't, the gas station brings more cars, making the car wash doesn't do. So you really can't compare that with what we're doing here, that's all.
Okay, thank you. And Mrs. Reedy had a question with regard to any change to her driveway, I believe, is what I heard her ask.
Right, with the road, would that road be moved at all?
No,
Okay.
that's totally not changing at all.
It's not great, we've dealt with it, not knowing we had any other option, but that would be unacceptable. The other thing is the line of cars. If that blocks the only passage that we have, that would be unacceptable.
So the only thing I can think of is putting either a sign or on the outgoing, please do not block driveway.
How do you not block the driveway if you're waiting to get out or waiting to
Well,
get
but
in?
you see that a lot in intersections. It doesn't mean everybody reads or obeys traffic signs, but
It would
there's-
be a health risk if you had an ambulance coming or anything like that. It really would be. That is going to be a dental office for years to come. It's now owned by Dr. Rebecca Blanchett, who's a young woman who just bought the practice.
I'm a little concerned we're kind of getting into a sort of a back and forth here, which
Yeah.
is probably not gonna be resolved easily. But I hear your point. What you were suggesting almost makes me think of a stop sign. I mean, if there was a stop sign before her driveway, that would sort of force people to stop before they passed her driveway, which would somewhat help to keep it clear. Is that kind of?
probably, yeah, or do not block driveway on a red light, or, keep clear during red light. I think there's something like that on Stillwater Avenue, a couple of those that you're not supposed to block.
There's
Again, that
very little room not to block.
Yeah.
One, sorry.
There are also 2 lanes too.
part of it is too, we're trying to record this, and when you're kind of sitting over there, it just doesn't work. So could we say that you would talk to John Terrio
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
and work on something that might satisfy her concern? And if I may point out, only because I think I see it on the drawing, I'm not sure I'm correct, but she said her concern was there was no other way to get out of there, but in fact, isn't there a way that a person could come out of her driveway and go left towards the car wash and then proceed around the car wash and come out on Hillside Avenue?
Yes,
So there is another way?
there is another way.
Okay.
That's blocked, yeah.
Thank you.
The hillside egress doesn't exist today. So that's maybe where.
It does.
It doesn't exist today?
Yeah.
Does it?
It's already, it's there, it's been there. That's existing, this is existing conditions and that road is constructed.
Because that gives them some options, doesn't it?
Two ways to go out. And then, okay, that's good for now. Thank you. Thank you,
Chair.
Mr. Marshall. Member Saucier.
Just to help clarify, just from my insight here, you've got, that's a straight right lane. You've got close to 100 feet of queuing from the light back to her driveway. Probably more like 80 or 90 feet. So you're talking like maybe 5 cars in there that could queue up. Most of the cars that are going through there aren't gonna go straight, they're gonna take a right anyway. The queuing from the car wash, nobody would ever wait. I mean, that's never gonna get, they've got 2 lanes going to the car wash, that's never gonna get that far back. And if it did, I'm pretty sure people would leave. So the risk is the departing cars, that's the only risk, that are going straight or right. I just wanted to say it's a pretty limited risk in my assessment of it.
Okay, thank you. Any other board comments?
Can I just ask for clarification? You mentioned working with John. Was that something you wanted to possibly condition approval on, or is that something you want to defer on?
You know, I don't need to condition this project on that. I mean, I generally feel Mr. Marshall has been before us before, he's coming before us again. I think Ms. Reedy seems like a reasonable person, and I know John's a good guy. So it seemed to me the three of them could come up with a solution to that, having some sort of a sign that would help her traffic flow coming out of her. Yeah, so I would just let it be as that. And it's on the public record of the meeting that I asked for it. Doesn't mean it'll happen, but anyway, thank you. Right, and I did hear, I mean, the 3 comments we had were really related to traffic. And I did hear Mr. Marshall say that there was, I can't remember how many cars, but you said there was a queue of 50 or something like that?
At least 40 to 45.
40-something in the double lanes before you, this is after you got off the cutoff road, correct?
Correct. It gets, once you get into the site, there's easily 40 to 50.
Okay.
With the
I just wanted to clarify.
Stacking.
Yep.
I think Josh is absolutely correct. I think if someone comes around the corner and sees, comes off the thing, they're just gonna go right through the hillside.
That's my sense as well. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I don't want to talk about that anymore, I think. Okay, do we have any other concerns? Board members' concerns? I think we are to the point where we can look at standards. So unless a board member has something concerning that they would like to bring up, and it sounds like we've hit everything so far, let's get to the standards. And I have Part 1, project meets the requirements of Articles 2 through 12. And number 1, can I have a motion on number 1?
Sure.
Member Maher?
I move that the board finds that, based on Exhibit 2, Sheet 4, and Sheet C4 and C7, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, Section 165-33.1's requirements surrounding erosion and sediment control.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Member Bazinet. Roll call vote. Member Saucier.
Yes.
Member Marhar.
Yes.
Member Hayes.
Yes.
Member Brush.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
Member Bazinet.
Yes.
Item 1 passes. Item 2, can I have a motion on item 2?
Mr. Chair,
Member Brush.
I move that the board finds that based on Exhibit 2, Sheet C2A, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, Section 165-65, requiring yard space for group buildings.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Bazinet, get that one. Roll call vote. Member Saucier.
Yes.
Member Marhar.
Yes.
Member Hayes.
Yes.
Member Brush.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
Member Bazinet.
Yes.
Item 2 passes. Item 3, can I have a motion on item 3?
Chair.
Member Saucier.
I move that the board find that based on Exhibit 2, Sheet C2B and L1, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-66 by providing a transitional yard according to the district development standards for the shopping and personal service district.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Member Bazinet, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Saucier.
Yes.
Member Marhar.
Yes.
Member Hayes.
Yes.
Member Brush.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
Member Bazinet.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Member 4. Number 4.
Mr. Chair,
Yep. Member Bazinet.
I'll move the board finds that based on Exhibit 2, Sheet C2A, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, Section 165-68, requiring adequate lot frontage.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Brush. Roll call vote. Member Saucier.
Yes.
Member Marhar.
Yes.
Member Hayes.
Yes.
Member Brush.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
Member Bazinet.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item 5.
Chair.
Member Saucier.
I move that the board find that based on the narrative in Exhibit 2, Sheet C2B, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Article 10, or Article X, regarding providing sufficient off-street parking spaces and regarding the required location, screening, setbacks, construction, and design of provided parking.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Member Bazinet. Thank you. Roll call vote. Member Saucier.
Yes.
Member Marhar.
Yes.
Member Hayes.
Yes.
Member Brush.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
Member Bazinet.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item 5 passes. Item 6.
Mr. Chair,
Member Bazinet.
I'll move the board finds that based on the narrative in Exhibit 2, Sheet C2B, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Article 11 regarding providing required off-street loading spaces and the required design of loading spaces.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Brush. Roll call vote. Member Saucier.
Yes.
Member Marhar.
Yes.
Member Hayes.
Yes.
Member Brush.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
And Member Bazinet.
Yes.
Item 6 passes unanimously. Item 7.
Chair.
Member Saucier.
Was
it Member Marhar?
Yes.
You guys are beginning to sound alike.
I disguised my voice. I did that pretty well, didn't I?
Yeah, sneaky.
I move that the board finds that based on Exhibit 2, Sheet C5, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code, Section 165-80, requiring connections to the public water and sewer system when possible.
Second.
We should say this is conditional, shouldn't we?
So I wrote in that condition to a different standard, which was later on, as far as adequate capacity. I thought that was more appropriate than this one. But if you want to make that condition, you're welcome to make that up.
Because this one just says they connect to it.
Right.
It doesn't say, it isn't.
Okay, that's
capacity
really more
question.
about connections than it is about, okay, fine. I'm good with that. Thank you. Where are we at? We have,
I seconded.
and you seconded, Member Saucier seconded, and so roll call vote on that. Member Saucier.
Yes.
Member Marhar.
Yes.
Member Hayes.
Yes.
Member Brush.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
Member Bazinet.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Item 7 passes. Item 8,
Mr. Chair,
Member Brush.
I move that the board finds that based on Exhibit 14 and Exhibit 2, Sheet C5, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code, Section 165-81, requiring appropriate lighting in accordance with regulations on intensity, direction, and height.
Do I have a second?
Yes.
Member Bazinet, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Saucier.
Yes.
Member Maher.
Yes.
Member Hayes.
Yes.
Member Brush.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
And Member Bazinet.
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Item 8 passes. Item 9,
Mr. Chair,
Member Bazinet.
I move the board finds that based on Exhibit 2, Sheet C5, and Exhibit 25, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code, Section 165-82, requiring fire protection.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Maher, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Saucier.
Yes.
Member Maher.
Yes.
Member Hayes.
Yes.
Member Brush.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
Member Bazinet.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item 9 passes. Item 10,
Chair,
Member Saucier.
I move that the board finds that based on Exhibit 2, Sheet C5, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code, Section 165-83, requiring adequate electrical services.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Bazinet. Roll call vote. Member Saucier.
Yes.
Member Maher.
Yes.
Member Hayes.
Yes.
Member Brush.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
And Member Bazinet.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item 10 passes. Item 11,
Mr. Chair,
Member Brush.
I move that the board finds that based on Exhibits 2, Sheet C5, and Exhibit 4, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code, Section 165-85 and 165-86, requiring compliance with submitting information in anticipated sanitary flows and compliance with the sewer regulations, with the condition that adequate sewer capacity is available prior to the applicant applying for a sewer connection permit.
Right, excellent. That's where it is. Thank you. Do I have a second on that one? Member Bazinet, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Saucier.
Yes.
Member Maher.
Yes.
Member Hayes.
Yes.
Member Brush.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
And Member Bazinet.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item 11 passes, so part 1 is satisfied. Part 2, the project meets district site development standards under Article 19. Item 1,
Mr. Chair,
Member Bazinet.
I move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2, 4, and 9, the applicant satisfied Section 165-135 of the Land Development Code regarding height limits, floor area ratio, impervious surface ratio, and buffer yards.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Brush. Thank you. Roll call vote. Member Saucier.
Yes.
Member Maher.
Yes.
Member Brush.
Yes.
Sorry, I skipped Member Hayes.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
Member Bazinet.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item 1 passes. Part 2 passes. Part 3, project meets the requirements of 165-101, shopping and personal service district.
Mr. Chair.
Item 1, Member Brush.
I move the board finds that based on the findings made in parts 1 and 2 of this document, as well as the findings outlined in this part 3, the project meets the requirements of Section 165-101B for uses within shopping and personal district.
Personal service district.
Personal service district.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Saucier, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Saucier.
Yes.
Member Maher.
Yes.
Member Hayes.
Yes.
Member Brush.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
Member Bazinet.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item 2 passes, which satisfies part 3, which passes part 4. Item 1. Part 4 is the project meets the requirements of 165.
Chair?
102.
Sorry,
one.
Did I skip one?
I think you skipped item 2.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, yeah, okay. They both end in shopping and personal service district. I just jumped right past it. Yeah, sorry, okay. So we haven't yet satisfied part 3. Could I get a motion on item 2 of part 3?
Yes.
Member Maher.
I move that subject to findings, I move, subject to findings that the standards in Part 5 have been met, the board finds that the applicant has met the standards for conditional use. The board also finds, based on review of Exhibits 2 and 4, that the project meets the requirements for retail, auto service, and drive-in businesses in the shopping and personal service district.
Yeah, that's an important one, not to skip. I was just checking to make sure you guys are paying attention. That's, do I have a second on it? Member Besnet is a second. Roll call vote, Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Besnet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, which satisfies item 2 after all of Part 3. So Part 3 is satisfied. Part 4, the project meets the requirements of 165-114 land development approval standards. Item 1, can I have a motion on that?
Mr. Chair,
Member Besnet.
I'll move the board finds that based on Exhibit 2, Sheet C3, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114B's requirement that the proposed parking and loading layout are arranged in a reasonable and safe configuration.
Thank you. Can I have a second by Member Brush? Roll call vote. Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Besnet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item 1 is satisfied. Item 2,
Mr. Chair,
Member Brush.
I move the board finds that based on Exhibit 2, Sheet C3, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114C's requirement that all proposed access drives from the site to any public right-of-way are reasonably necessary and safe.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Saucier seconded. Roll call vote. Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Besnet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item 2 is satisfied. Can I have a motion on item 3 from Member Hayes? Because I think she was trying to get in here.
I gave it a look.
The board finds that based on,
You move.
oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
See?
Yeah,
This
it's,
is gonna-
pressure's on now.
Erase that part of the tape. The board finds, I make a motion that the board finds, based on Exhibits 2, 11, and 15, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114D's requirement that stormwater runoff from the proposed development will not have an unreasonable adverse effect on abutting or downstream properties or protected resources, and that all downstream channels of municipal stormwater collection systems have adequate capacity to carry the flow without significant negative effects.
Thank you. And a second by Member Besnet. Roll call vote. Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Besnet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, which passes item 3. Item 4, have a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Member Besnet?
I'll move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2 and 14, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114E's requirement that all outdoor lighting shall be designed, installed, and maintained to avoid unreasonable adverse effects from light pollution.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Brush? Thank you. Roll call vote. Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Besnet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item 4 passes. Item 5,
Mr. Chair?
Member Brush.
Chair, I just wanted to make a comment real quick. You had mentioned wanting the applicant to add vegetation in between the end of the bay and the dentist office. So this would be the recommended location to add a condition if you want to add a condition for that.
And again, I'm willing to let Fred get something on the. Yep. Yep. I'm satisfied with the way the standard is.
Okay.
Thank you, Anya.
Yep.
Chair, I think it is still worth noting that the condition around the Rosa rugosa and the Syringa reticulata, those can be withdrawn.
They
So we
should be
don't read them
withdrawn.
verbatim.
This is the one, right?
Those conditions withdrawn, okay.
Yeah, so it basically,
The last sentence gets struck.
from with the condition,
Yeah.
that just gets struck from the motion. You want to make the motion, Member Brush?
Yes. I move that the board finds that based on Exhibit 2, sheets C2B, L1, and L2, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114F's requirement for landscaping.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that one?
Second.
Member Bazinet, is that, yep. Roll call vote, Member Saucier,
Yes.
Member Maher,
Yes.
Member Hayes,
Yes.
Member Brush.
Yes.
Member Boucher,
Yes.
Member Bazinet,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes, which satisfies item 5. Item 6. Motion.
Chair.
Member Maher.
Okay. The board finds that based on Exhibit 2, Sheet C3, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114G's requirement that the location of the building meets all required setbacks and is situated to avoid unreasonable adverse effects on adjacent properties or public rights of way.
Thank you. Can I get a second from Member Saucier?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, Member Saucier,
Yes.
Member Maher,
Yes.
Member Hayes,
Yes.
Member Brush.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
Member Bazinet.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, which satisfies item 6 and allows passage of part 4 onto part 5. The project meets the criteria for a conditional use under 165-9A. Do you have a motion on item 1?
Chair.
Member Saucier.
I move that based on the findings made in parts 3 and 4 of section 4 of this document, as well as based on review of exhibits 2, 4, and 5, the board finds that the project meets the standards and use conditions of the district in which the property in question is located, the shopping and personal service district. The board finds that there are not any variance requirements or other standards that would impede with the granting of the permit.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Bazinet, thank you. Roll call vote, Member Saucier,
Yes.
Member Maher,
Yes.
Member Hayes,
Yes.
Member Brush.
Yes.
Member Boucher,
Yes.
Member Bazinet.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item 1 is passed. Item 2,
Chair,
Member Bazinet.
I'll move the board finds based on Exhibits 12 and 21 that the project will not create unreasonable traffic congestion or hazardous conditions on contiguous or adjacent streets.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Brush, thank you. Roll call vote, Member Saucier,
Yes.
Member Maher,
Yes.
Member Hayes,
Yes.
Member Brush,
Yes.
Member Boucher,
Yes.
Member Bazinet.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, passing item 2. Item 3. Motion?
Chair.
Member Saucier?
I move that the board finds, based on Exhibits 2 and Exhibit 25, that the proper operation of the conditional use will be ensured by providing and maintaining adequate and appropriate utilities, fire protection, drainage, parking, and loading, and other necessary site improvements.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Bazinet, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Bazinet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Passing item 3. Item 4. Do I have a motion on that one?
Mr. Chair.
Member Brush?
I move the board finds, based on Exhibits 5, 9, and 10, that the proposed use, although not appropriate for every site in the zone, is appropriate for the location for which it is sought because the proposed use will conform to the general physical development pattern of the immediate area as to architectural style, building bulk, and extent and intensity of site use.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Bazinet, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Saucier?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Bazinet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimously passing all parts of the standards. So we're to a decision. Could I have a motion on the decision scrubbing out item 2, which is the invasive species items.
Chair,
Member Saucier.
I move that the board finds that the project meets the standards for a land development permit for a major site development and conditional use, and therefore grants the land development permit for the proposed project with the following condition: that sewer capacity be available at the time of sewer connection.
That adequate.
Adequate sewer capacity available at the time of sewer connection.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Brush. Thank you. Roll call vote. Member Saucier.
Yes.
Member Maher.
Yes.
Member Hayes.
Yes.
Member Brush.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
Member Basnet.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So this project passes, gentlemen. Thank you for being patient and joining us this evening. And code office will be the next step in the process, and good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
I've
it.
been before many boards, I want to say, and I'm very impressed with this board. And your opening, you explained everything to the public was great. I've heard we did that before. Very impressed.
Thank you. It's good to hear. We don't always share good words here, so I appreciate it.
Thumbs up.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that takes care of most everything. We don't have minutes from the last meeting, so we won't go over those. Other business, we do have to vote on adoption of the notice of decision for the land development permit for 287 Godfrey Boulevard, which notice was in your packet. And so if we don't have any questions or comments, hey guys,
Have a good night.
and so if we, yes,
I wasn't here for that
you don't vote.
meeting, so I don't vote on that.
You don't vote, no?
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. Good reminder, actually. So, does anyone have any question on that? If not, then I would look for a motion, and it would basically be to adopt the notice of decision for 287 Godfrey Boulevard. Thank you. Do I have a motion? Don't be shy.
I'm trying to find where we are,
Okay.
because it dropped off from,
It should be at the end.
It should be right, pretty much the last thing. Thank you, Brian.
It's actually, yeah, 493.
Member Boucher.
I move that we adopt the notice of decision for the land development permit for 287 Godfrey Boulevard. Is that sufficient, or do we need?
That's all you need.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Member Basnet. Roll call vote. Member Saucier.
Yes.
Member Maher.
Yes.
Member Hayes.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
Member Brush. Nope. I'm sorry. Member Basnet.
Yes.
Member Jonas, because you were here for that one.
Yes, I was. Well, I was online.
Yes, online. And the chair votes yes. So we vote for the adoption of that development permit. Thank you. I know it's late, it's 9:30. I'm gonna be real quick, but I have a couple of comments I would just like to toss out there. Really apologies. I know the vote around the Elks Club was confusing. I know trying to make it a ought to pass made it doubly confusing. And I want to emphasize to everyone that when we have, and by the way, Planning Officer Collette, I liked that we had those three options. So I'm not being critical of that at all. But it does make it a little challenging for us to figure out what we're voting for. And so my emphasis is that when we have that happen in the future, if you feel you're getting lost in what we are saying or what we're trying to do, please stop us. I mean, you know, it's hard when you're online. I know that's the tough thing because we can't hear you when you're on Zoom. But, you know, if you just say chair, I usually wake up to that and we'll stop and pay attention. And I would encourage you to, as much as possible, make sure you're understanding what you're voting for and how you're voting. I thought Member Marhart did a pretty good job of explaining that one, and I kind of left it at that. But certainly don't get to a point where you are unsure of what you're voting. You can stop just before you vote and ask for clarity if you need it. So please make sure that all of you do that as much as you need to. The other thing is that, you know, getting back to Member Jonas being on Zoom, I rewatched that meeting last week for a couple of reasons. And what I realized is that that background noise, like what we just had happen right there, right now, makes it almost impossible for somebody on Zoom to hear. Just because these speaker systems are so good, they catch everything. My wife has told me, I have this thing where I click my pen, and apparently she can hear that on Zoom. And she tells me to stop clicking my pen.
Oh, yeah, it picked me up as soon as I opened my, I had a Velcro thing. And I
And you
opened it,
open that up.
zoomed right
It
over
picks
to
up
me.
anything. And so, yeah, so I will try to be more aware of that. And, you know, if you are aware that something's happening which might be making it difficult for others to hear or see on Zoom, don't be afraid to close the doors or stop us and ask people to stop speaking or whatever, because, you know, we need to do a good job of getting this stuff recorded, and we also need to involve people on Zoom who are trying to be involved. The last thing I've got is I am going to be gone at the next meeting, so Member Brush is going to be chairing the next meeting. And that's that. Does anyone have any other questions or comments before we get out of this place? Member Bush?
I don't want to add, I know we're tired, but maybe, yeah, so I wanted to talk about the voting a little bit to understand if there's any, if there's a reasoning behind the roll call voting versus the show of hands that we had done previously. And so if you have an answer to that, and then I have maybe a follow-up.
Sure.
How you go?
Well, it's really a legal question.
Oh, very good.
Well, just put me on the spot tonight. I mean, the legal answer that I can give you right now is just to make sure that we're tracking everybody, and with the owl, it doesn't always catch everybody that's raising their hand, so that we can make sure that everybody on Zoom knows who's voting for what, and when we do the meeting minutes in the future, we know who voted for what. So it's just to track all of that, and then Robert's Rules of Order also covers a lot of this kind of stuff, so there's probably a justification in there somewhere, but I would have to go digging through there about roll call and when that applies.
Yeah. What they talked about in training with us, with that question got brought up in the MMA training that I
Right.
went to, is that with the standards they suggest we always do a roll call vote when we're voting on standards. The other stuff, not so much. That doesn't really matter so much. So if we're voting on, you know, I don't know, a move to postpone something or whatever like that, maybe not so important, but they certainly want to see a roll call vote on the standards. Because again, if anything ever goes to court, there needs to be that documentation of who voted for what. And there isn't with a raise of hands very well.
As a suggestion though, what if you called it out as unanimous, if it's unanimous, like if we do a hand, and then if it's not unanimous, then do a roll call? Like today, we had all those ones, and if you just said unanimous.
I am very okay with that, but the legal department have to tell us it's okay.
Yeah, so I'd have to look into Robert's Rules of Order and see what it says about roll call voting and like where that goes, and I'll talk to Dave as well and check with him and have an answer for you all.
Yep. Yeah, and don't be afraid to call the people down at MMA either, because.
Yeah, I call them all the time.
They, when I was there, they said do it. I mean, they really strongly suggested it, so, yeah, that's a good question. Is that, you still look a little wondering?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the phrasing. I like what Member Sosi said, but it's, I was thinking about, there's even another way to present items where, I can't remember the term, that's why I was looking so quizzical.
Consent?
It's a
Consent decree?
Yeah, you do a consent decree, and if there's an objection to any of the sections, then we have to break them out, and then we have to talk about each one. But if there's a consent decree across a whole section, we could move through a lot of these quickly, but maybe it's worth deliberating on them further. And hearing it spoken aloud sometimes prompts us to raise questions. So it was just something food for thought. You know, I thought we had to stay here till 10. You know, this is really what I was trying to do.
Yeah, and we're almost there.
Yeah.
We did talk about that at a staff level, if we could do that, and it was determined that that wouldn't really be the best option for standards, but Grace might have
more info on that.
The consent decree part?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, again, I would have to do more research into it. I wasn't here for all of these discussions, but yeah, I mean, it's mainly just so that the public knows that you're hearing their comments, right? And then you're voting on them after you've heard what they have to say. And considering their thoughts as well when you're voting.
That's a good point. Member Marhar asked me a question earlier, and I want you all to realize, one of the reasons why I ask, before we get to the standards, do any board members have any issues? What was discussed with the staff was that if we flush out, I think this was Director Krieg's suggestion, really, as I remember, is that if you flush out the issues that you have out front, it makes the standards go pretty quick. I actually timed them tonight, and I forgot to put down the time on this last one, but the first set of standards, we did them in 14 minutes. So that's not a huge amount of time. I mean, at 14 minutes, I know it feels long when you're reading them, right? And you're voting on every one. But what I'm trying to get to with that statement up front is, if we've got some issues, let's get them out there and talk about them right now.
I appreciate the process and the
Yeah.
diligence around it, so it's not that, it's just trying to be creative. If there is a way to do it all,
Quickly.
make everyone happy.
Yeah, I would like that too. I've heard from MMA, you have to vote on the standards each one, but I would love to have Grace look into if there's some other way we can do it. There's always some way you can be better, I'm sure of that.
I was, I know, I still have more. Maybe I should save some of these for next time. I was gonna propose that we consider democratizing the reading of the motions, just so that it doesn't always fall on some people. I'm sure maybe we like the way it works, so if it's not broken, don't fix it. But I was just gonna suggest that, because reading the motion doesn't indicate your preference for it one way or the other, it's just a matter of business. But maybe that's not the appropriate way to do it, maybe.
So what are you
there's
saying,
other
like,
we just do a round table of you do the motion, you do the motion, you do the motion, and then like.
Yeah, I'm not against that. In one way, I would say that that's better, because then the other folks, like, the other folks.
I think you're gonna add time
Maybe you're
to a
right.
situation that.
Yeah, if you're reading the motion every time, you're not thinking about it. You're just anticipating reading it, right? And so if you take turns, then you're only, really just doing the reading one time. The rest of the time, it gives you a chance to read ahead a little bit, understand what you're voting on before you vote on it.
Well, and we wouldn't have to wait, for people individually to,
To raise their hands.
to say, because, I mean, it's insignificant really in terms of time, but, somebody has to say, okay, I'm gonna jump in now. And
I think it's gonna add time, because not everybody is at the same, someone's gonna have to try to find it, and we're trying to fix something that right now is costing us a lot of time and tedium to get through it, to make sure we read it. I would say we don't try to fix this particular issue.
Maybe the best thing is we just encourage everyone to
Jump in.
raise their hand and jump in. And do a motion.
It was more to just reduce the chair, like in the overlapping chairs, but I totally get it, and I don't have any more questions, so.
At least through this meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, we do?
Do you need you guys to sign the decision, so.
Sign the paper, please. Otherwise, the meeting is adjourned.
We're all signing the same paper.
Is there a chair line? Which, that's the decision, so you don't need to sign the decision.
Oh, the last decision.
Right? That's the
Correct,
decision
that's the
for
one you just
Godfrey.
voted on. Yep.
Could I borrow your pen?
You can.
Thank you, sir.
See, now you're trying to write like me too, aren't you? That's after you tried to talk like me.
As I tell,
I was gonna call a meeting when my battery.
as I tell people, I'm not a doctor,
I
but
was
I
gonna
write.
call, I was gonna tell you time out because my battery is
And
just
then
about dead.
my penmanship has always been terrible, for my entire life. And my wife, who used to be a teacher.
Chair, did you adjourn the
said
meeting?
that,
I did adjourn the meeting.
Okay, great.